Tonight, we fall backward into time, not into dreams, but into heat, a place where the morning doesn't invite you, it confronts you. You don't wake to birdsong or cool linen. You wake to wait, the kind that hangs in the air before your eyes even open, the kind that clings to your chest like damp cloth. Somewhere in the darkness behind your eyelids, Ra has already begun his ascent. The god of the sun has no patience for sleep, and neither does this day. Your mat beneath you is made of woven straw, flattened by habit and sweat. It smells faintly of earth and someone else's sleep. You roll to your side slow, careful because even that small movement feels like scraping sandpaper across your ribs. The linen sheet over your legs is so thin it's nearly imaginary, more symbol than comfort. Outside, the first light is not golden, not gentle, it is raw, pale, and waiting. There is no glass to filter it, no curtain to hold it back, only a reed door, and beyond it, a sky already too bright for this hour. You sit up, and the dust you disturbed last night is still hanging in the air, as if time itself is reluctant to move forward. Your feet find the packed earth floor, warm already, and as you breathe in, you notice it again, the stillness. It is not peace, it is anticipation, the kind of hush that lives just before a desert wind, or just before your name is called in a place where names are not spoken lightly. You are not rich. Your ceiling is made of palm thatch, your walls of sun-baked mud. You have no perfume, no attendants, only yourself, a small corner of Egypt, and the knowledge that the day ahead will not wait for you to be ready. You don't awaken. You emerge, slowly, reluctantly, as though your body is made of something heavier than flesh clay, perhaps, or stone that cracked during the night and now struggles to remember how to move. The air around you is already swollen with warmth, not the kind that comforts, but the kind that accuses. There is no breeze brushing across your face, no hush of morning fog, no gentle sigh through the reeds outside your home. There is only the dense stillness of heat that has been waiting all night to begin its trial. You shift on the mat, and the straw presses into your skin like memory sharp in places, softened in others, but unmistakably there, like a voice that never stops whispering, even when you try not to listen. Your linen sheet lies crumpled and damp, useless against what lives in the air. You breathe, and the breath sticks. Before you open your eyes, you already know Ra has risen. He has not tiptoed into the sky or slowly peeled back the night. No, Ra rises, always. That is the verb for gods. It is not morning. It is his return, his fire, his expectation. He crosses the sky not as a sun, but as a sovereign burning in his solar bark, dragging light and silence behind him like a royal procession, watching the world he shaped take its first agonizing breath of the day. The old stories say he commands the hours, but here, now, in the woven quiet of your small mud brick room, you feel it more viscerally. He commands you, not with words, but with heat. You are not being awakened, you are being pulled from sleep like a defendant from a cell. You turn your face toward the doorway, toward the vertical line of light seeping through the reeds, and the heat touches your cheek like a test, already, before water, before thought, before prayer, already. And you haven't even stood up. Your bones ache in ways that have no name. Your joints murmur under your skin. There is dust on your tongue, though your mouth was closed. There is salt on your chest, though you have not moved. The body, in this place, does not wait for labor to begin breaking. It begins breaking the moment it opens itself to the day. And still, you rise, because that's what one does. Because in Egypt, the day is not a gift, it is a proving ground. To remain in sleep is to disobey the tempo of divine time. You swing your legs off the mat, and the soles of your feet meet the packed earth, already warm, already familiar in its expectation. You stretch, but it is not for comfort, it is a negotiation, a slow reminder to your muscles that the body must comply, not resist, not today, not under this sky. You press your palm against the wall to steady yourself, and the sun baked clay hums beneath your skin as though it too is trying to speak. There are no curtains, no glass to shield you, just a reed door, loosely bound, leaning slightly from yesterday's heat. You step toward it, and the air thickens, clots in your throat, moves around your body with the heavy patience of something sent to observe, to judge. The God of the sun is not metaphor here. He is not poetic. He is not distant. He is on your skin. He is in your breath. He is the reason your shoulders tighten when you move, and you do not curse him. You dare not curse him, because here, in this first light, in this first taste of flame, you understand something that the world beyond deserts and temples and jackal headed gods has long forgotten. You do not own your mornings, you survive them. And the sun does not ask if you are ready, it only asks if you will endure. You step outside, and the world greets you like an open oven, the kind that's been waiting with its mouth wide and its breath held hot behind a door made of light. The air does not wrap around you, it crashes into your chest with a dry, quiet violence. And the first breath you take feels less like respiration and more like surrender. You blink, slowly, cautiously, as if your eyelids have only just remembered their function, and in that single act, the skin beneath your eyes begins to sting from the sweat that hasn't even fully formed yet. Your body reacts before you can reason with it. Already. Your arms are damp. Already. Your back is soaked through the linen you tied so carefully. Already. Your calves begin to prickle as the dust clings to your skin, and your blood forgets what it's like to feel cool. The ground is firm, but only because it hasn't cracked open yet. It's the kind of firmness that feels temporary, like it's holding something darker just beneath the surface. You walk anyway, because standing still is worse, and your legs obey, but not gladly. They drag, they tighten, they warn you in small, aching whispers that the day is not meant for comfort. The heat doesn't rise, it radiates upward from the soil, from the walls, from the very water you carried yesterday in clay jars, now warm enough to boil lentils. You try to rub the sleep from your face, but it only spreads the sweat. Someone passes you, carrying a bundle of reeds on their back, and you notice the way their shoulders slump, not from age, but from repetition, from mornings that began like this and never stopped. They don't look at you, they don't need to. There's nothing to say. In this place, acknowledgement is reserved for the gods. Everyone else is already too busy surviving to waste energy on language. You keep moving, not because you have somewhere to go, but because the act of stopping feels like it would invite collapse. You reach for the small cloth wrapped at your waist, wipe the back of your neck, your forehead, your chest, and already it's wet again, like your sketite has decided to mourn something silently and endlessly without ever telling you what it is. You glance toward the horizon, and the light is so intense you can't tell where the sky ends and the air begins. It all blends together, a blur of white gold and silence that feels sacred, not because it is holy, but because it is inescapable. Your lungs ache not from effort, but from dryness, as if the air here steals more than it gives, and still no one speaks. Even the animals seem subdued by the sun's early command. A dog lies panting in the shade of a broken wall. A goat flicks its ears at flies and doesn't bother to rise. A boy squats by the edge of a courtyard, his head down, his shoulders steaming in the light. You watch him for a second, not because he is doing anything remarkable, but because he is doing exactly what you are quietly losing pieces of himself to a morning that asks too much too soon. And somewhere deep in your chest, you feel it, that dull, unspoken truth that pulses beneath every step. You are already tired, not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, a different kind. A tiredness that feels like erosion, like you are slowly being worn down from the outside in, like the heat and the light and the silence are polishing you into something smoother, flatter, more compliant. You haven't worked yet. You haven't lifted a stone, fetched a jar, touched a tool, and yet your shoulders ache. Your hands tremble faintly when they hang too long at your sides. Your eyes sting even when closed. The day has only begun, and already your body has begun to leave you behind, piece by piece, quietly, efficiently, like a servant slipping out the back door at first light. And the worst part, what you dare not say aloud, not even in prayer, is that no one will call this suffering. No one will ask you if you're all right. This is not pain. It is the cost of being awake. It is the toll extracted not by accident, but by design. The sun demands skin. The dust demands breath. The gods demand reverence. And in between, your body is simply collateral. It will carry you until it doesn't. It will obey until it fails. And when it fails, no one will say your name with sorrow. They will say it with familiarity, because here everyone breaks. The only difference is when. The river is close, but not close enough to be kind. It waits at the edge of your morning like a task disguised as sanctuary, and as you walk toward it, jar in hand, shoulder already sore, you pass walls made of mud brick and breath, walls that lean slightly inward as if they too are tired of holding the same position under the same sun. You follow a path carved not by design but by feet, by routine, by the weight of thousands of bodies that came before you with the same need to cleanse, to collect, to reset just enough to survive one more round of flame. And yet the Nile does not welcome. It allows. It accepts without warmth, without question, its banks muddy and buzzing with things that fly and sting and slither. And when you arrive, there are already bodies crowding its edge, neighbors, elders, children, livestock, no separation, no solitude, just a tapestry of survival unfolding in real time. You find a space, if it can be called that, between a bent tree root and a shattered pot someone left behind days ago, and crouch low, letting the jar rest against your thigh as you reach into the water that smells like history, like rot, like something that was once divine but has long since given up trying to be beautiful. You wash, if it can be called washing. You splash water onto your arms, your face, the back of your neck. It doesn't cool. It doesn't soothe. It simply covers the sweat you earned just by walking here. You do not have soap. You do not have oils or scented herbs or even a moment alone. You use sand, coarse and indifferent, rubbing it into the skin until it stings, until the grime shifts just enough to be replaced with a different kind of discomfort. This is not cleansing. This is compliance. The water is for function, not for peace. A woman beside you dips her baby into the river and scrubs gently while the infant cries, not out of pain, but out of shock, as if even this young, the body knows that this act is not born of care, but of necessity. A boy crouches to fill a jar, but never stops looking at something far off, perhaps a reed moving strangely, or a ripple that doesn't belong. Crocodiles have their own calendars. They do not honor yours. And you lower your head, not out of reverence, but to avoid swallowing another fly. You are not clean when you rise. You are simply wet, gritty, and marginally more prepared to be seen. There is no mirror. You check your reflection in the surface of the water, and it gives you only a blur of features distorted by silt and light. Eyes half lost in the shimmer, mouth crooked not from expression, but from exhaustion. You look like everyone else. You look like no one. You are a shape the day has not yet decided how to use. And when you step back, shaking the water from your hands, from your sleeves, you feel no transformation. There is no freshness, no renewal, only forward motion. Back home, there is no moment to dress yourself in peace. You wrap your tunic quickly, the linen clinging again before you've even tied the knot, and brush your fingers through your hair with the urgency of someone who knows that presentation matters, not for beauty, but for survival. You must not look weak, not this early, not while the overseer might be watching. You strap on your sandals, if you have them, or simply prepare your feet to bleed again. You gather your tools, baskets, blades, ropes, and there is no time to sip, to rest, to breathe in a way that feels yours. The household is already moving. Voices are low, movements brisk, everyone operating on the unspoken agreement that slowness is a sin. You have not eaten, you have not prayed, you have not exhaled fully since stepping into the day. And there is no place to retreat, no room with a door, no chamber to hide in, to stretch, to sigh. Everything you are is exposed body, labor, fatigue, fault. There are no secrets in this morning, only expectations, only the rhythm of movement that must continue or else collapse. And if you collapse, it will not be seen as illness. It will not be seen as grief. It will be seen as failure. And failure is not forgiven, not here, not by the sun, not by the overseer, not even by the gods. So you press your thumb into the knot at your waist to tighten it one more time. You lift the jar, you adjust your shoulders, you step forward, and you do not ask for rest. Because in ancient Egypt, you do not begin the day begins you. You sit not at a table, but against the same wall that held your body when night was young and breath was easier. There is no pause, no silence of thanks, no exhale that marks a shift from one space to the next, only the slow settling of your legs beneath you and the dull, private ache in your knees as you curl them closer to the ground. The food is there, but it does not wait for ceremony. There is no plate, no utensil, no tablecloth to signal the beginning of a meal. It begins the moment you stop resisting it. You break the bread with your fingers, coarse and brittle, the crust flecked with particles that glitter, not like salt, but like something harder, sharper, stone ground, and unapologetic. The first bite does not surprise you. It never does. It is dry, dense, and not warm bread made not for pleasure, but for purpose, baked in clay ovens blackened with yesterday's heat and possibly the day before's rodents. You chew slowly, because chewing too fast means pain, and because you've learned that rushing does not change what waits at the bottom of your stomach. The sand inside the bread is not a flaw, it is an ingredient. The grinding stones used to mill the grain shed tiny shards that become part of your breakfast, the way ash becomes part of incense, unavoidable, invisible until tasted, sacred in their own strange way. Your tongue presses the bread against your molars, and somewhere in the pressure, a sharp edge reminds you that erosion happens not only to land, but to people, to teeth, to the delicate edge of a spirit too tired to complain. Across from you, someone coughs mid bite, not choking, just reacting, a throat protesting something it knows it must accept. Beside the bread, a cup. It looks like beer, and it is called beer, but it behaves more like liquid fatigue, thick, cloudy, lukewarm, poured from a vessel that smelled faintly sour even before it was touched. You drink because it is what your body needs, because the water might not be safe, and because the beer, fermented just enough to kill what's inside it, carries calories and nothing more. It is less a beverage than a slow compromise. Children sip it, elders depend on it. It is breakfast not because it satisfies, but because it fills. You close your eyes as you drink, not from satisfaction, but because your eyes are tired of holding open against the weight of light. If there are onions, they are few, sharp, and raw. If there are dates, they are wrinkled and cling to your fingers with the texture of memory. If there is fish, it is dry, salty, and gone before it can be appreciated. You are not nourished. You are patted briefly, just enough to keep your body from quitting before midday. The meal does not ask you to engage. It asks you to endure. You eat because the day requires it, because the sun takes more than you think, and because no one will wait for you to catch up if you fall behind. There is a stillness to this meal that is not peace. It is resignation. No one speaks. No one smiles. No one asks if the bread is different today. It isn't. It never is. You chew, you swallow, you swat a fly from your lip with the back of your wrist and keep chewing. You do not sip slowly. You do not savor. You do not wipe your mouth. There is no time for that. The meal ends not when the food is gone, but when your mind begins thinking of the next thing: tools, fields, stones, overseers, the heat pressing harder now against your spine. You wipe your hands against your tunic, adding new smudges to yesterday's stains. You rise slowly, and the bread feels heavier in your gut than it did in your hand. You stretch, but only slightly, and your back hums with the ache of someone who has just committed to another round of obedient labor. You do not thank the gods aloud. That would be too much, too loud, too hopeful. You simply nod once, quietly, internally, to no one in particular, a nod not of gratitude, but of agreement. Agreement that you will try again, that you will work again, that you will break again, if asked, without asking for anything in return. And when you walk away from the wall, from the crumbs, from the buzzing flies that never truly leave, you do not feel full, you feel possible, and in Egypt, that is more than enough to get you to noon. You walk with your head slightly down, not in shame, not in prayer, but in calculation, because the difference between posture and defiance is often decided by someone else. And in Egypt, those someones have names you do not speak aloud. Your tools rest against your back like burdens disguised as companions, and the sun has already found the back of your neck again, as though it never left, as though it too is part of the watching. Your sandals drag faintly through the dust, not enough to raise clouds, just enough to remind you that you have weight, and every step is marked, noticed, counted by someone somewhere. There is no anonymity in labor here. You are part of a machine older than kings, greased with sweat and ritual, built not of iron, but of repetition, and you are the repetition. The overseer does not shout today. Not yet. He stands at the crest of a low rise, arms folded, his shadow long and motionless, a figure more statue than man, but somehow more piercing. You do not need to see his face to know that it sees you. You do not need to hear his voice to know that it can summon pain. The silence of his presence is louder than any insult, more commanding than any whip. He watches, and in that watching, you remember everything you must not be too slow, too curious, too distracted, too human. You adjust the way you carry the basket, not because it hurts your shoulder, though it does, but because you've learned how to make suffering look efficient. You bend forward slightly, showing the arc of a back that breaks correctly. Around you, others do the same, a line of bodies moving toward the field, toward the quarry, toward the temple wall that still lacks 2 rows of stone. You are not alone, but you are not with others either. Companionship would require freedom. This is synchronization, a shared rhythm built not from joy, but from necessity. You don't speak to the woman beside you, even though you know her name, know her cough, know the shape of the scar on her left hand. You don't speak to the old man behind you, even though he once taught you how to carry water without spilling it. No one speaks. To speak is to risk. To be heard is to be remembered, and in the presence of the overseer, memory is a weapon. He is not a god, but he carries their authority. His clothing is cleaner than yours, his hands smoother, his gaze harder. He eats different food. He prays in a quieter room. And yet he does not own the land. He does not command the flood. He simply ensures that you remember who does. That is his role, to make you feel the Pharaoh's reach in the shape of your spine, in the sound of your footsteps, in the sweat that trickles down your ribs while you keep your face still. You wonder, sometimes, if he thinks about anything else, if he ever stares at the river and forgets what he is. But then he moves just one step, just one arm lifted, and 20 of you adjust at once. And you remember he doesn't have to be cruel, he only has to be visible. The work begins without announcement. The baskets are unloaded, the stones are lifted, the hoes dig into soil that no longer resists, but does not yield easily either. Your arms burn, but you make no sound. Your mouth stays closed, not because you have nothing to say, but because nothing you say would matter here. The overseer does not wait for mistakes, he waits for weakness. There is a difference. A mistake can be corrected, weakness must be corrected, and he can smell it like smoke. You swing again, and your wrist protests. You shift the grip, you keep swinging. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs and drops a tool. The noise is sharp, too sharp, and the field stills for 1/2 second, not from sympathy, but from calculation. The overseer turns, nothing else moves. The tool is retrieved, the rhythm resumes, and you breathe a little more shallowly, because that cough could have been yours, because tomorrow it might be. The gods may judge your soul when you die, but the overseer judges your body while it still has breath. He is the eye that never closes, the silence that cuts deeper than noise, the reminder that in this kingdom, dignity is not something you wear, it's something you hide. Because in ancient Egypt, you do not work for pride, you work to be forgotten by the man with the whip. There is a moment quiet, fragile, treacherous, when your back screams louder than your mouth can bear, when your lips part, not to speak, but to release the sound of something human slipping loose. And yet, even then, you stop yourself. The groan dies on your tongue. The words never arrive. Because even the shape of complaint, even the whisper of why, could be dangerous in this land where breath is measured not only by the overseer, but by the divine order itself. You return to your labor with the restraint of someone who knows that expression is luxury, that emotion is a kind of flame you dare not let rise, not here, not under the open eye of Ra, not under the painted ceiling of a sky that records everything with more memory than mercy. You want to say your legs are shaking, that the sun has lodged itself inside your skull, that the stones you carry feel heavier with each step as if they absorb your doubts and feed on them, but you don't. You want to tell the woman beside you that her breathing sounds ragged, and you see yourself in that sound, or the boy across the field whose arm trembles as he lifts another block, that he's not weak, he's just alive, and that's allowed. But you say nothing, because you cannot speak comfort in a place where suffering is expected. You cannot voice resistance in a world that believes complaint is a break in the sacred rhythm of Ma'at, the divine balance, the eternal law, the invisible scaffolding that keeps the Nile flowing and the stars in their place. Even your mind must be disciplined. You learn to police your own thoughts the way a scribe polices ink. No stray strokes, no indulgent flourishes. You practice the art of inward stillness, of trimming even your imagination until it fits the mold of what is permitted. You tell yourself you are fortunate, that you could be the one laying beneath the stones rather than carrying them. You remind yourself that labor is a form of prayer, that movement is obedience, that sweat is holy. These are not lies. Not exactly, they are the hymns you hum to yourself in the back of your skull to keep from drowning in the noise of your own fatigue. And if, just for a moment, you forget, if a thought escapes like steam from a pot too tightly sealed, something soft, something bitter, something questioning, then you force yourself to remember. The Pharaoh is not a ruler, he is a god. His word is not law, it is truth. To question the work is to question his will, and to question his will is to undo the harmony of the universe. That is the scale. That is the cost. Your tongue is not your own. Your silence is your offering. Your breath is borrowed from a system that returns nothing it takes. You watch others learn the same lesson. A boy once whispered something behind a half finished column, just 3 words, maybe 4, said with a smile that came too easily. You never saw him again. No one did. The overseer never raised his voice. He didn't need to. The silence that followed was lesson enough. And so you learn not only what not to say, but what not to think, what not to feel, what not to let live too long in the space behind your eyes. You fold those parts of yourself like linens you'll never wear again, and store them far, deep, where no one looks. And yet, beneath the obedience, beneath the bowing spine and clenched teeth and bloodless lips, something else lingers, not rebellion, not yet, but a question with no voice. It pulses sometimes when you are alone, when the fields empty and the night carries the scent of something forgotten. But even then, you do not name it. You let it drift like smoke over a basin of coals and watch it vanish, because in ancient Egypt, to suffer is human, but to complain is heresy. It begins in your sandals, always there before you notice it, a fine layer of grit that grinds against the skin of your heel until it stings, then blisters, then bleeds, and still you walk, because there is no time to stop, no point in emptying what will fill again within 10 steps. It moves up from your soles to your calves, creeping beneath the hem of your tunic like a quiet curse, not shouted, but whispered endlessly, intimately, until you forget the feeling of clean skin. And then it finds your chest, your mouth, your eyes not all at once, but gradually, with the patience of something ancient and entitled, as if it remembers your ancestors and assumes it still owns you too. It isn't just on the ground, it is the ground, it is the air, it is the weight behind the wind. You squint against it even when the sky is still, because even stillness carries dust here. You blink, and your lashes crunch faintly from the buildup. You spit, and the taste of earth follows you, coats your tongue, your teeth, slips down your throat like a memory of something lost and dry. You try not to inhale too deeply, not because of heat, not because of exhaustion, but because you know that the deeper you breathe, the more of Egypt you carry inside your lungs. Your home is not a sanctuary from it. The sand does not respect thresholds. It comes in through the roof, through the windowless cracks, through the spaces between the door and the frame and the door and the day. It coats your mat. It hides in your grain. It collects in the folds of fabric hung to dry, so that when you wrap yourself in clean linen, it rasps against your skin like laughter. You try to brush it away with your hands, but your hands are coated too, and the cycle begins again to this endless exfoliation of dignity. Even your food is seasoned with it. The bread you eat every morning contains the ghosts of grinding stones, the powder of millstones shedding themselves into the dough. You chew, and you feel it flattening your teeth, dulling the ridges, turning your mouth into a slow riverbed of worn enamel and quiet resignation. You laugh sometimes, a private, breathless chuckle, because it feels absurd to eat the same thing that scours your flesh. But what choice is there? It is part of the flavor of the land. It is what makes the meal Egyptian. The sand becomes a kind of language. It speaks of time not in hours, but in erosion, in the way it smooths stone, dulls edges, and wears down memory until even the sharpest hurt feels rounded, until even your most private dreams of comfort or silence seem buried beneath something weightless and immeasurable. You feel it in the corners of your eyes when you lie down. You feel it beneath your nails when you scratch your scalp. You feel it in your ears, as if even your thoughts must pass through its filter. You do not know a version of yourself without it. You do not remember the first time it marked you. And in the heat of the day, when the wind picks up and the sky turns briefly opaque with 1,000 tiny blades, you do not run. You turn your back, wrap your arms around your head, close your eyes, and wait. You've learned that resisting sand is like resisting breath, it finds you anyway. You cannot banish it. You can only outlast it. You whisper your prayers through grit clenched teeth, not to keep the storm away, but to keep your mind from fraying under the noise, under the stinging, under the knowing that this too is sacred in some cruel cosmic way, because in Egypt, sand is not the enemy. It is the witness. It is what records your presence more faithfully than any scroll. It is what swallows your footprints, so no one remembers where you stood. And when the wind dies, and the sun lowers its gaze, and the dust begins to settle once more, you brush yourself off not to be clean, but to make space for tomorrow's layer. You don't curse it anymore. You don't plead with it to leave. You simply live with it, as one lives with a shadow uninvited, intimate, and always, always there. You do not live far from the temple, but then again, no one does not because the gods favor your village, but because they require proximity, not for comfort, but for control. Their shrines are scattered like watchtowers, their eyes carved into stone, their names sung with every drop of beer spilled, every crumb of bread offered to no one in particular. You see them before you see yourself in the morning, and you greet them not because you hope they'll listen, but because not greeting them would be noticed. There is no corner of your day untouched by divine expectation. You tie your sash and murmur a line to Ra. You pass a cat and nod slightly to Bastet. You scratch your arm and wonder, briefly, if that means Set is near. The gods are not distant. They are here, woven into the wind and the illness, and the sudden good fortune of finding an onion in your bowl. They are present in the silence of your child's cough and the cracked dryness of the fields. They do not bless often, but they do observe. You feel it when you kneel beside your doorway and the sun hits your back with unusual weight, like someone is pressing their palm into your spine, reminding you that your posture matters, that your shadow is shaped by reverence or by guilt. You do not know which. Your rituals are not optional. You do not pray when you feel spiritual. You pray when you wake, when you bleed, when you eat, when you ache. You pray not to be heard, but to avoid being forgotten. And the prayers themselves are not gentle, they are instructions, memorized lines passed down like tools, words sharpened by fear and repetition. They do not ask for peace, they request survival. And survival is not guaranteed, even for the faithful, especially for the faithful. You've seen the priest walk past a mother whose son burned with fever and offer nothing but a glance and a murmur in a language only the gods understand. She bowed anyway. She bowed deeper than before. There are idols in your home, not large, not ornate, but tokens, carved from wood or clay, shaped by someone who believed just enough to get the form right. You touch them at night, not to ask for dreams, but to keep the nightmares from becoming omens. You burn herbs when you can afford them. You wear an amulet against scorpion venom, not because it works, but because it has always been worn. You do not speak the names of demons, but you know them, and you feel them in the corners of rooms where air turns still, where a child cries at nothing, where a jar breaks too cleanly. You have heard that the gods gave the Pharaoh his crown, that he is not a man, but an embodiment, that when he breathes, it is Mayat that moves, and so when he demands a new temple or a war, or a tax that bites into your grain, you nod, because to question him is to question the gods, and to question the gods is to invite chaos. Chaos is not dramatic here. It is subtle. It is a sick cow, a dry well, a dead infant. You do not risk it. No one does. Even in death, the gods do not loosen their hold. You are told that your heart will be weighed, that your soul will be judged not just by what you did, but by what you felt, by what you allowed to fester inside when no one was looking. There is no hiding from them. Even your bones must be positioned properly in the grave. Even your name must be spoken long after your breath is gone, or else you vanish entirely, not just forgotten, erased. This is what the gods demand a participation, performance, permanence. You do not need to love them, you only need to obey. And yet, despite all of it, there is beauty in their silence. There is something strangely calming about knowing you are never truly alone, even when no one holds your hand, even when the work is hard and the bread is bitter and the sand won't leave your eyes. You light the oil lamp at dusk and trace the curve of your mother's scarab amulet, and for a moment, just a breath, you believe that maybe the gods see you not as a subject, not as a sacrifice, but as someone trying to last, trying to matter, trying not to fall apart before the light fades. Because in ancient Egypt, the gods do not soothe, but they never look away. It starts with a sting, maybe from a scorpion, or the sudden jab of something sharp beneath your fingernail, or a dull ache that spreads too slowly to ignore, and you know what it means. Not just pain, but vulnerability, a crack in the illusion of endurance you've spent so long maintaining. You do not reach for medicine because there is no shelf, no salve, no glass bottle labeled with hope and dosage. You reach for belief and for someone old enough to carry it. The healer arrays wrapped in linen that smells like resin and ash, a satchel of herbs slung across one shoulder, a string of amulets clicking faintly as he moves. His eyes are not warm, they are sharp, alert, trained not to comfort, but to observe what does not belong: fever, swelling, trembling breath, twitching fingers, whispers that aren't meant for the living. He speaks few words because the body is already speaking, and because speech is dangerous when pain might be the punishment of a god or the result of an enemy's curse. He kneels beside you with the gravity of someone preparing for more than healing, preparing for negotiation. He opens his pouch and pulls out ingredients that belong more in stories than in skin crushed locusts: dried fig bark, the mold from yesterday's bread, strands of hair tied with clay, something that smells faintly of copper and prayer. You do not flinch. You've seen worse. You've had worse. He begins not with hands, but with voice, a chant, low and rhythmic, barely audible, more vibration than meaning. You do not understand the words, and you are not meant to. The gods understand them, or they don't. Either way, your breath slows slightly, because in the rhythm of the chant, there is a feeling of structure, of something older than fear. He grinds the herbs with a stone worn smooth by centuries, mixes them with oil that glows faintly in the firelight, and applies the paste to your wound, or your belly, or your chest, wherever the pain lives now. It burns, but you do not move. Pain is a kind of agreement. It means the body still knows how to respond. Sometimes there is bloodletting. Sometimes there is heat. Sometimes there is a charm tied around your wrist, and you are told not to let it touch water for 3 days. You obey, not because you believe, but because belief is safer than defiance. Sometimes the healer leaves behind a clay figurine meant to absorb the illness, and you are instructed to bury it at sunrise. Sometimes he leaves nothing but silence, and that is the worst, because it means the gods have already decided. You think of the texts kept in the temple, the scrolls where ailments are listed like sins and cures like riddles. You've never seen them. You're not allowed. But you imagine them full of diagrams and instructions, inked by men with clean fingernails and steady breath. The priests say those words are sacred. You think they are guesses, beautiful guesses, perhaps, but guesses still. The children are treated with honey and salt, the elders with incense and distance. If a woman bleeds too long after childbirth, the midwife burns herbs and prays. If a man's tooth blackens, the healer scrapes it with bronze or pulls it out with hands that do not shake. If someone coughs until they bleed, you rub their chest with oil and onion and sleep beside them to make sure they do not slip into death unnoticed. You do not ask what works, you only ask what doesn't kill you faster. Sometimes the healer works a miracle. A fever breaks, a cough fades, a wound closes, and people speak his name softly for a few days until someone else dies. And then his name returns to the background hum of reverence and doubt. Sometimes nothing works, and the body becomes quiet, and the healer leaves just as silently as he arrived, his satchel a little lighter, his face unreadable. You have learned to heal yourself with time, with rituals, with stubbornness. You hum the prayers even when your mouth is dry. You crush mint leaves beneath your pillow to keep the spirits away. You sleep in one position for fear of waking something in your spine. You learn to read your body the way a priest reads omens. And when the gods answer with silence, you bow anyway, because in ancient Egypt, health is not a right, it is a gamble, and medicine is just another name for faith with a mortal face. You close your eyes, not because you are ready, but because you are exhausted, and in Egypt, those two things are often the same. Your body has worn thin beneath the linen, your breath shallow, the labor of existence chiseled into every joint. And still, even now, there is no full release, because death here is not the end. It is an entrance exam, a performance, a ritual that demands composure and memory and moral precision. You do not simply die, you embark. The moment your breath leaves, the rituals begin. Your name is spoken carefully, deliberately, because a name not remembered is a soul erased. Your body is washed with water from the Nile, scented with oils pressed from herbs you never tasted in life. It is not kindness, it is code. The body must be readied, wrapped, sanctified, dried and bound, like a scroll containing secrets meant only for gods. They remove your organs, not for science, but for storage, each placed in sacred jars, each guarded by a different deity with a different animal face. Even your lungs are catalogued, not as flesh, but as evidence. You are not preserved because you were loved. You are preserved because the afterlife has rules. And when the time comes to weigh your soul, you must speak, not with lips. Those are long gone, but with memory. You must recall the 42 confessions, one by one, in a voice deeper than speech, reciting not just what you did, but what you did not do. I did not steal. I did not kill. I did not curse the gods. I did not defile water. I did not make others weep without cause. Your heart lies on a scale opposite a feather, and it must not weigh more. It must be light, not because your life was light, but because your guilt must not leave a trace. If you pass, you move forward not into sleep, but into eternity, a field of reeds, they say, where the air is soft and the sun kind, and your family waits at the edge of the horizon, but it is still labor. You till the land, you sail the Nile, you work, only this time without pain. Unless, of course, your family failed to bury you with enough food, or your name has not been spoken in too many years, or someone misplaced your heart scarab, and now the gods are uncertain whether you meant what you said. If you fail, if your heart tips the scale, the punishment is not fire. It is disappearance. A creature waits with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, the hind legs of something unspeakable. Amit. She does not hurt you, she erases you, not punished, not remembered, just gone. And for a people who carved monuments to memory, that is the worst fate of all. Your tomb, if you had one, might be looted, your Shabdi dolls stolen, your charms melted down, your name scratched from the walls by desperate hands who needed gold more than they feared curses. And even then, your soul is not safe. You rely on strangers to carry your story, on weather not to wipe away your paint, on sand not to swallow you completely. So you understand now death here is not mercy. It is more bureaucracy, more ritual, another hierarchy, another chance to prove your worth. And if you are lucky, very lucky, maybe a priest somewhere still whispers your name once a year when the flood returns. Maybe a child traces your amulet and feels, faintly, the warmth of your breath, because in ancient Egypt, you do not live for joy, and you do not die for peace. You live to remember, and you die to be remembered. You've made it through, not triumphant, not untouched, but through. And in ancient Egypt, that was the highest praise endurance in the face of sun and silence, sand and scrutiny. You have seen what the paintings never show, what the gods never reveal in their statues, that to wake beneath that sky meant to be watched, to serve, to sweat, and to obey. But it also meant to carry your name with care, to love without proof, to find breath in dust and peace in ritual. You didn't win. You weren't meant to, but you remained. As the heat lowers and the prayers fall quiet, you lie still, and something softer begins to stir inside you. Not relief, not pride, but recognition. You see now how even the smallest comforts, shade, water, silence, were sacred. You understand why the people sang for their dead, why they buried bread, why they feared being forgotten more than being poor. Because what they built was not just pyramids, not just temples, but memory itself. And you, even for a night, have carried that memory. So now, breathe. Let the linen rest gently across your chest. Let the wind settle outside your door. There is nothing more to prove. No God is watching, no stone must be moved. For this moment, the kingdom is still. Please, if this story held you close tonight, leave a light in the comments. Share it with someone who loves the quiet, and let your breath slow with mine, because the gods may never sleep, but you can.